Okay, so howdy sports fans. This week I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to use this class we used to use called uh, being an NCO pentathlete, right? And so basically we looked at being proficient in all aspects of being a soldier. Now you can take this and of course apply it to any type of leadership, right? So the vision, as you can see there, innovative, competent, professional, enlisted leader grounded in heritage, values, traditions, embodies a warrior ethos, champions continuous learning, capable of leading, training, motivating soldiers. An adaptive leader is proficient in joint combined experiential warfare, and so on, right? And of course, the NCO must always lead by example, train from experience, maintain a force of standards, and take care of soldiers, and of course adapt to the changing world. So when we look at the pentathlete, so it comes from the, looking at, 5 major areas, right? So got to be a critical and creative thinker, got to be a warrior leader, got to be a leader developer, and you got to be an ambassador and a resource manager. So when we look at that, we got a person who can see the forest for the trees, um, sees the entire spectrum of operations, is effective in any situation you put them in, adapts and quickly transitions in whatever role or whatever position they need to play. So they've mastered everything. And so if you look at that, that's really kind of critical, right? So here's our characteristics, our 5 areas, right? So warrior leader, effective in any environment, right? Educated, proficient, a warrior. There's a warrior ethos. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Leads from the front 24/7, 365, right? Can clearly, concisely communicate, right? Has disciplined initiative. All right, that just doesn't mean flying off the handle. That means that while you might have to take a different course than what was initially described, you still understand the intent, your boss's intent, and you adapt to that, right? And is all about people and teams, right? Builds teams, takes care of people, and of course physically fit and culture aware. Physical fitness is also about emotionally, being stable as well. We talk about being a critical and creative thinker, again, confident, decisive, competent, right? Thinks fast, can, react effectively, especially under stress. When we say thinks outside the box, is innovative. It is not afraid to try something, or give me a good example of outside the box thinking. During World War II, they discovered this thing called confirmation bias. So bombers, the 8th Air Force was losing lots of bombers because we were doing daylight bombing runs. And then they were trying to figure out how to make the aircraft more survivable and the crews more protected. And so what they did was they examined returning aircraft, right? And they saw where the bullet strikes were. And of course they were thinking about armoring up those areas. And then one of the engineers kind of chided them and said, these aircraft came back, so why are we looking at where the bullets are striking? Because obviously those areas, while they've been strict quite a bit, hadn't harmed the crew or the survival of the aircraft. So maybe we should armor up the areas where we don't see any bullet strikes, because we're not, again, examining aircraft that crash land back with us or aircraft that crashed en route under fire. We're not able to examine those. So let's maybe look at a different approach, the things that don't confirm what we believe. And so that's that outside the box thinking, right? You got to understand second, third order, right? We call tertiary effects of your decision. So if you're a pool player, you take a shot, you're not just taking a shot, you're taking a shot to set up for your next shot and possibly your next shot, right? So you're thinking moves upon moves. It's like backgammon. People say chess. Yeah, chess is a strategy game, but the oldest and one of the toughest strategy games is backgammon. And you play backgammon, you had better have a strategy, and you better look at those decisions that you make, because there's second and third order of impacts, right? And then which goes back into, like, your tactical decisions could lead to strategic implications, right? That tactical corporal can make a mistake that resonates, all right? Examples of this was during the British expedition to Africa fighting the Zulu. In the second fight, they thought that the bearers were dumping ammunition. The ammo bearers, the slaves, were dumping ammunition. So quartermasters started screwing down the tops of the ammo crates so that it would require you to take your bayonet to open them up. And so in the second fight, when they got caught out in the open, they were their rifles. Not only did they need to get these boxes open quickly, but then the rifles were overheating in the fight, and the cartridges were expanding, and so then a bayonet had to be used to flip out the empty cartridges. So these little simple decisions of screwing down the lids, taking it where they can't use their bayonet, not giving them a tool to properly, broken shell extractor tool, thus then resulted in them not having bayonets fixed, and of course, losing badly in that Zulu campaign, getting just absolutely decimated. You know, leader developer, that's like a mentor, right? So we're not just, developing ourselves. We have to develop our subordinates to replace us, right? So we look at professional and personal growth and development. We look at those challenges to take people outside their comfort zones, to get them exposed and more well-rounded, and thus made into a pentathlete as well, right? Ambassador, ability to deal with various cultures and understand languages of those cultures as well as their traditions. And I say this, it's hard because, you're going to run into some things that are confusing. Quite example is discovered when I was stationed in Korea that in the Korean language, they do not have a word or a term for impossible. It just doesn't exist. So typically what they tell you when something's impossible, as the indirect translation, is very, very difficult. Well, in America, if we hear very difficult, we're thinking, well, they just need more time or more money or more people, right? But no, when Koreans tell you something's very difficult, they're really telling you, no, it's just not going to happen. Don't count upon it. But that's a cultural thing. If you don't understand, that's going to cause friction, because as you want to think they're negotiating with you, they're not, and they just start getting a little perturbed because it comes off that you're kind of insulting them now, because they're saying it's impossible, and you're saying no, you just need more money, more time, more resources. So there's things like that you have to understand, and you have to adapt to it, and deal with it. And some of the traditions might be very repulsive to us and foreign, but hey, if you want to do a deal globally, you got to understand that, and you got to deal with that. And then we make sure that we're, as a character, and within our character, that our values, our national values, our organizational cultural values are always something for them to see. So, you got to be respectful. You got to be patient. you've got to interact with people. And I would tell you, one of the things I always learned whenever traveling abroad, to at least order a beer, at least order a hamburger or something in that in their local language, or find out what their local uh, traditional dish is. Order that and compliment it. Um, when I was in Bulgaria, it was rakia and this chapchka, which is a salad. It's a kind of a traditional chapchka salad. It's big, flippin' salad, right? And of course, the deal is you don't really eat the chapchka. You just drink the rakia. And that's what traditionally they do at dinner. And so I ordered that, and you know, and the locals got a pretty good kick out of it. That he knows about chapchka and rakia. Okay, very very nice. And so there's what you want to do that, right? Being a resource manager, there's these things we have, right, that are all resources. People are a resource. Money is a resource. Equipment is a resource. Uh, Facilities are a resource. Land is a resource. Time. Time is a absolute fixed resource. Don't waste it. Don't waste your people's time. You gotta be good stewards of all those things, right? People, time, equipment, money, facilities, all these resources. So, being a critical creative thinker, that's what we're talking about right there. Sound tactical decisions with those strategic implications, right? So if we looked at how we look at some of our roles and as leaders, and our background and our duties and responsibilities and all that kind of stuff, it just kind of rolls into just these steps, right? That take us there, right? So this is important for leaders to understand, because there's things that leadership is leadership regardless of a commissioned officer or non-commissioned officer, but there are specific traditional roles and authority and responsibilities that are inherent in those positions, right? Um, and it's earned every day, and it's earned in every engagement, in every time you're working with your boss, right? And so you have to understand that you have to meet these roles, right? Understanding your authority, you have the responsibility to meet that authority. You're in good physical condition. You are professional. You are courteous and respectful, regardless, because it's not about the person. It's about the position and the rank. And then you pay attention to detail, man. Okay, you are focused because you're a professional. You're getting paid to do this, right? And then you have these areas of pride and loyalty and maintenance. And loyalty is loyal with those whom I serve, senior superiors and subordinates alike, in accordance with the NCO creed, right? And so it goes in several directions, okay? But yes, pride, esprit de corps, right? It's making that connection at multiple levels. Connection with your national origin, connection with your larger organization, connection within the sections or smaller subordinate organizations within that organization, right? And then, when we talk about maintenance accountability, that's all about, again, that whole, being stewards of our stuff, right? Resources. And then, have fun. Enjoy what you're doing, right? Okay? Enjoy what you're doing. It will not always be fun, but if you can laugh about it, you can roll with the punches, right? You can be resilient. And so, when we talk about, standards, appearance, saluting, right? Cornerstones of discipline, because those are just basic blocking and tackling things, right? If you are disciplined in the little things, you will be disciplined in the big things, all right? Know what the standard is. Know what it is. Don't guess. And if it evolves and changes, you got to be, current, right? So we have these things called non-commissioned officer development, professional developments, right? NCOPD, and really, I like to call them LPDs because I always included the officers on mine because we're all leaders, we're all working together, right? So it's not, and then as a sergeant major, you're the big, the grand poobah of these developments, right? And so basically, things we talk about is, how do we do training, good performance-oriented, evaluated training, right? Leader's notebook, that's that stuff that you need to carry with you, not, because you can't always commit it to memory, but quick reference, right? Not just walking around with a smartphone, or, you actually need typically sometimes a ledger, right, to keep these notes, right, of what's going on. Counseling for development, right? Which leads into NCOERs, which is, how you get evaluated, right? Which then leads into also awards, right? Recognizing for service, recognizing for achievement, recognizing for valor. Of course, and in knowing what the rules are, regulation updates, you got to know that, and having a professional reading list. And I mean, there's lots of great leadership out there to read about, just whether you want to read about, Medal of Honor recipients. Of course, Stephen Ambrose has a lot of great books about American citizen soldiers, whether it's, just fighting in Europe or fighting in the Pacific, or, his book about Band of Brothers, there's just a lot of great. So does your boss have a reading list? Maybe look at your boss's reading list and start reading what they're reading. So then you can also kind of see where they might be coming from with some of their ideas. But there's lots of professional reading lists out there. And I'll eventually post up mine so you guys can get an idea of some of the things I have read, I am reading, and I plan on reading. Yep, got to be safe. You gotta use that composite risk management, right? When you get new people in your organization, like, welcome them, get them to understand what's going on, break them, onboard them properly, right? Integrate them, onboard them, give them a fighting chance of being a good, successful member of the team, right? Tell them what type of organizational traditions and customs and courtesies and policies and things that they need to, be, read on immediately so they can, integrate effectively, right? Yeah, be objective, right? Most there, yeah, you can sum up people's failure into two things. A lot of times, it's lack of actual training on what we want them to do, and in a lack of motivation. And leaders can instill both of those. Leaders can give the proper training, and leaders can mentor to get them directing into at least, some symbol of motivation, or, at least let them know up front, hey, this gets better if you get a little aggressive with it, get a little motivated with it, right? And so you as a leader be the role model. If you're not motivated, your subordinates won't be motivated. If you're not trained, they're not trained. Yeah, counseling, man, I tell you, very underrated thing. People look at it as typically drudgery. Is how you develop people, man, and it puts it on paper and it makes a record of it, and it kind of put in individual psyche. It kind of puts that, you change a gear now and realizing, hey, they're really paying attention, and depending on how much, of course, motivation or how much experience, what you're going to tell them how to solve it, or you're going to get them to decide how to solve it, or they're going to tell you how they're going to solve it, and then you're going to make that contract with them, and then they own it, right? So, but you've written it down, so there's a record of it. They can't go back later and say, well, I don't remember, I don't recall. Oh, here you go, recall it. As a subordinate leader, you inspect. Don't expect what you don't inspect, and inspect properly. Know what you're inspecting for, right? Are you expecting for accountability? Are you expecting for serviceability? Are you expecting for attention to details? Do you know what right looks like, right? Are you making up things as you go? Are you just inspecting to harass people? Are you inspecting for safety, uniformity? What are you inspecting for? But yes, when you do an inspection, you should record what you find, good and bad. Good, so that maybe later on you can go and commend them later in a performance counseling. Hey, on that inspection, that looked really great. Or no, hey, this is incorrect. Hey, I noticed you weren't wearing the right kind of boots. They don't have the proper protection. You need to go correct that immediately and come back and let me see you. And then also by recording this, if you start seeing a pattern of, is it training or is it just selective but yet willful disobedience? What's going on here? Right? And then whether you're in the military or whether you're, in working in a company, there's always in that job description as other duties as determined, right? So like you may be the person in charge of the voting registration for people, right? Helping people, get, because they may care about that. They may have, help people with making sure they file their income tax on time. It may be, oh, you're in charge of the fire inspection security stuff, right? So make sure that our fire extinguishers are up to date and we have exits posted properly in different parts of the building so that the people know how to get out in case of emergency. You make sure we conduct our fire drill training and that kind of stuff so that when the city fire inspectors come around, we'll pass, right? There's stuff like that, right? You may be tagged to go get trained and be a resilience person or an equal opportunity, officer for complaints, right? Because they need to show compliance in that. So you got to understand that you get a little bit extra with that, right? Not extra pay, just extra responsibility. So how do we in the Army grow people? Well, we use standards, we put them in charge, we hold them accountable. That's just kind of how it works, right? Yeah. We task issue standards, you're in charge, execute, and then we supervise, oversee, right? Enforce the standards, work within and towards that commander's intent, and be accountable. And when we say accountable, that's that integrity thing, man. You can make a mistake, okay, fine, own it. Don't weasel, don't whine, don't start offering extenuation and mitigation. Just own it, okay? And there's only one guy in charge. There's only one boss. So subordinate leaders, whether foreman, shift supervisor, lead team lead, whatever it may be, those subordinate leaders are a force multiplier because you can't be everywhere and you can't micromanage everything. So you need those cats, right? Things to understand, so in the Army, we have this thing, of course, you have social media and it's really relevant and realizing, be careful what you do because you're reflecting on the team and yourself, right? MedPros is how they track people's medical readiness. It's an online thing. It's kind of important. You can't really go anywhere if you're not, you don't want to get a toothache in combat. I can tell you that right now. You don't want to have a medical issue outside of, things that happen, but you don't want to go there with a condition. So you got to take care of your medical, your screenings, right? But so things that leaders are responsible, sponsorship, new person comes in, get them onboarded correctly, right? Leaders responsible for making sure promotions are recommended and processed timely, so that those that are carrying the water get promoted accordingly, right? You want to keep people, right? You want to keep the best people. Well, that's talent management. So you got to work to make sure they re-enlist, right? You want to keep them on. You want to keep them on your team. Um, you play whatever part of whatever NCO or whatever leadership chain that you're in, you're involved in, right? So know where your role is and support that channel of information, right? You may sit on councils like dining council, right? Cafeteria council, right? Um, and there may be meetings for that, right? Your career development, right? Sitting down and understanding for where I want to go in my career, what other jobs do I need to do? What other things do I need to master? How do I look, and talking to my boss stacked up against my peers as far as going where I want to go, right? Um, yeah, and then of course awards, getting to those other schools, um, making sure people's pay is straight, and again, counsel, right? And then, again, these are the same stuff, we've kind of hit over before. MEDAL is a mission essential task list, understanding the individual, collective, and high payoff tasks that make up that MEDAL that you got to train these guys on, so that regardless of what mission you're on, you can do those subordinating tasks, right? Certifications, you need guys that are certified, got driver's licenses, that you got to get them to training, right? If they're a sniper, you got to get them recertified every 6 months. You got to get them to the schoolhouse, um, and so on, right? And then, and when you look at individual and section stuff, again, understanding the levels of training that you're responsible for, right? These are all things that you have to observe, control, right? Sergeant's time. That's a time where you're afforded, you get to train your people on those individual high payout tasks that they need the most work on, right? And it's your time, and you write the lesson plans, and you take charge, and you own it, and you do it. Now, in the infantry, we used to say every day sergeant's time, but that's not always the case, because we have a lot of training distractors that will arise with taskings and so on, and we have to meet those things. We look at discipline. This is the things we're talking about, right? Appearance counseling. Can you march? The Army has gotten a long way away from that. It always cracked me up because, in the founding of, marching is drill ceremonies, while it's traditional, is a foundation of teamwork and battle drills. They originally they were battle drills, right? How to fire maneuver, right? That's what column movements are about. That's what all that stuff. How to address your ranks properly, right? Which is a battle formation. All that. And so for years, and I as I made sure as a platoon sergeant, I made sure as a first sergeant major, sergeant major, that one of the things that was always included in the morning PT plan as part of their cool down and recovery was a good 5 to 10 minutes of drill, standard basic TC 3-22.5 drill and ceremony. Get out there, practice that. And of course, definitely when we were getting ready to change the commands or deployment, redeployment ceremonies, we did some DNC, so we didn't come here and just, walk in looking like a bunch of hobos. Ironically, I'm in a place that I would think they would do a lot of drill ceremonies, but they really don't. I mean, the freshmen do, the piss heads do, but the upperclassmen seem to just kind of meander around the outside of the formation, barking out corrections when they really should be in the formation with just one person outside in charge, giving commands and calling cadence to keep people in step. But yeah, everybody should be practicing drill and ceremonies. Everybody, all the leaders, right? Police call, right? If people throw trash everywhere, which Aggies aren't supposed to litter, but they kind of still do. but you should pick that trash up because it's attention to detail, it's motivation. You care about your facilities, you care about, you're being a good steward, right? Yeah, traffic violations. Yeah, well, if you're not safe and you're indisciplined when you're driving your vehicle and endangering yourself and others, golly, you're high risk. Who needs you? So when that thing called blotter report, so that's what the Army calls when somebody gets arrested and gets what's called a serious incident. So the MPs send out the reports overnight and in every day of who's gotten in trouble and what it was for, on or off post. And then you got letters of recommendation, right? On the spot corrections, being courtesy, having courtesy and respect. Camouflage, wearing your camouflage properly. Yeah, that's basic individual discipline. Covering all exposed areas of skin in the correct, method with which to break up the outline of the face. High shine areas dark, low shaded areas light. Billets, how do you live? Do you live like a pig? Or do you live in a pretty clean, healthy, in your motor pool, is your equipment parked properly, safely chalked up, organized, right? Are there drip pans underneath the vehicle just in case, so you don't end up having to report a hazmat leak and getting fined, right? When people separate, right? Are they separated and transitioned properly, right? Professionally, right? Whether it's at the end of the term of service, ETS, or an involuntary separation. How's that handled? Expeditiously, properly. UCMJ. This is a double-edged sword, right? I mean, there's times when you have to do it, right? Absolutely. But if you have a lot of UCMJ, well, your unit's kind of indisciplined. So what's going on there? And then suspension. So that's where sometimes you basically, you tell somebody, hey, you're on probation, man. Right? So making sure that that's done properly, right? Flagging them. And then we look at morale and welfare, right? How's our working conditions? Are people being able to go on leave and take passes, right? What initiatives do you have for those soldiers out there that don't have families, but they've got personal time and they need to do stuff? Do people want to go to unit functions and spend time with each other on the off duty, right? Are we predictable? Are we following the training schedule? Are we getting it out? Are we not? Are we fighting to keep that thing from being changed, right? Do we have sports programs for guys that want to get out there and do extracurricular or co-curricular stuff, right? Do we keep the information flow going? Are we using our chain of command so sports channel? Yeah. Family time. Are we protecting that? Our living conditions, again, are the facilities functional, right? Do we have, do the toilets work? Do they have hot water? Is there mold, right? Are the washing machines working, right? MWR activities, which, that's morale, welfare, recreation, right? Yeah, that could be sports programs. That could be a lot of stuff, right? What's going on? Are there any tours that people can take? Do they have that? The boss is, again, better opportunities for single soldiers as part of the single soldier initiative stuff. Are people getting promotions? Is their pay right? Family support groups. That's where the unit spouses get together, organization spouses get together and help each other out, right? It's it's a formal program. It's funded. Do we offer, do we make sure that the spouses can get home and babysit the kids while the spouse, the civilian spouse, can come in and see what's going on and get the information, right? That sometimes the working spouse doesn't, really want to talk about, right? Recognition programs. Again, that goes to awards and, what are some education opportunities besides, Like, are we giving them time to, and do we have a program to help defer the cost of tuition so they can go and take some college courses and, you know, learn to critically think even better? What's our DFACs like? Is it good food? Is it good, healthy food? Is it plentiful, right? Um, NCO of the Year, Soldier of the Year. Yeah, those are kind of good professional boards, good for interviews, good for, recognition. Audie Murphy Club. See, that's a leadership club here in the continental United States. Overseas, they call it the Sergeant Morales Club. But that's a good professional club where guys do community service. A lot of like-minded professional leaders get together and mentor each other and so on. So, those are important, right? And then if we look at combat, things that NCOs leaders need to understand is pre-deployment, getting ramped up, ready to go, trained, qualified, equipped, outloaded. Then when you're on deployment, keeping people on the battlefield, getting the mission done, and understanding the physical and psychological toll of sustained operations, round the clock, sustained operations for 9 months, 1 year, 16 months, so on, right? And then for your redeployment, basically you redeploy back, you reset, you get, people leave, new people come, get new equipment, rinse, repeat. So, when you're in combat, then you're an organization that's doing their mission, right? For ready to go, right? And then we get people out the door and we break it off in those areas. So if you're working for a civilian company, right? So, every day you're doing your job. Every day you're going to go out there and you're working your objective. You are fulfilling your mission. So you got to focus on those things with people, facilities, equipment, and of course, personal time, right? So, depends on where you're needed, right? As a leader, you got to figure out where you're needed, right? Friction points, right? So, for me, this is the things that we would do, and I would have my NCOs do it, right? So we check our defensive posture, we check our locations, we'd always look to improve, right? Then before patrols, pre-combat checks and inspections, and then making sure that sometimes if we had what we call a slice organization, so if I had like a MP company with me or a engineer breach team, or an engineer route clearance team, I'd make sure that where the friction would, I would find myself there at those points of friction, right? Coordinating, deconflicting, right? If we're going on to an objective, sometimes you got to be at that breach site. Sometimes you got to be at the casualty collection point to make sure that the guys are getting stabilized and evac'd in that golden hour. And then if we had to get emergency resupply because we got a little bit more than what we bargained for, being prepared to go in and cut out a helicopter landing zone or a supply drop zone, and then get some security on it and call it in, right? Then also tying in operations and then making sure that we continue to have communications, right? Make sure the net was up. After operations, basically getting the butcher's bill, and then reorganizing, consolidation, reset for the next mission. And then when I was in basically the rear in the garrison, we try to keep things routine, and things become routine when you do them routinely. Now, that's a quote from a former sergeant major of the Army. I think is very true. True leader has the confidence to stand alone. Yeah, the courage to make that tough decision, and the compassion to listen to the needs of others. Does not sound to be a leader, but becomes one by quality of his actions and the integrity of his intent. In the end, they're much like eagles. They really don't flock together. But there's times we do get together and mentor each other. So that's my presentation. Sounds like that's about that time again. Hope you enjoy.